That is right, everybody. You guessed it. Welcome back to the Noah Livingston 2025 record predictions. Today, we are going to be discussing the Florida State Seminoles. As you heard from the beginning of this video, the war chant is one of the most iconic fight songs in all of college football, in my opinion, anyway. Um, so, let's go ahead and get into it. And I'm going to start things off the same way as I did as the Tennessee one. We're going to look at last year for the Noles. It won't be much to look at, so it won't take that long. But last year was by far one of the worst, if not the worst, seasons in Florida State history. It was definitely a year to forget if you're a Nole, and there's not much more to be said about that. They went 2-10, 1-7 in the ACC. Their only two wins were a miracle victory against Cal, 14-9, and then they blew out Charleston Southern 41-7. That's it. That's all. They only won those two games last year. They lost 10 games. And as I mentioned, it has to be one of, if not the worst seasons in program history for Florida State. But this year's a new year. One thing I'd like to say is my condolences go out to all of those affected by the shooting in Tallahassee a couple weeks ago. Um, you never like to see anything like that. It's unfortunate. And rather you like Florida State or you don't like Florida State, at the end of the day, the college football world is a family, and in moments like that, you have to feel bad for the university as a whole. So, my condolences definitely go with them. But moving on, so going ahead to 2025, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the coaching staff for Florida State, something I didn't do with Tennessee, because it's pretty interesting. So, head coach Mike Norvell, he's entering his sixth season with Florida State, I'm pretty sure. And in three of those 5 seasons, he's had a losing season. Two of those seasons, it was back to back really good years with Jordan Travis. They went 10-3 in the first one, 13-1 in the second one. But aside of that, they have had 3 losing seasons, and if they don't get something turned around fast, they'll be on the verge of 4 of the last 6. Norvell came in from Memphis, and big difference from Memphis to Florida State. So the first year or two, maybe you cut him some slack, but now Norvell's getting to the point of where he's gonna have to step up. So, honestly, I know Florida State probably can't afford to fire him due to the contract that they gave him. They're kind of in a Jimbo Fisher situation, um, which is unfortunate. But they did it to themselves, and I honestly think, regardless of the money, this is a do or die season for Mike Norvell. I'm not saying they're going to win the national championship or that's what they have to do, because clearly they're not built for that, but they cannot have any remote, similarities to last year. They're going to have to play Florida State football this year for Mike Norvell to have some sort of safety. Um, so that's what I think about head coach Mike Norvell. Then Florida State hired Gus Malzahn as their offensive coordinator. He was a head coach at Auburn for a long time. He most recently was at UCF as the head coach. Now he comes to Tallahassee as the offensive coordinator, and I'll give him some credit. He's a great offensive mind. I wouldn't pick him to be my head coach, so maybe Florida State made a good decision offensively with that hire. We don't really know what to expect out of Gus. Only time will tell, but that is Florida State's new offensive coordinator. Then their new defensive coordinator is Tony White from Nebraska. Um, so pretty much what Florida State did was kind of go to other Power 4 schools and get to what they thought was the most experienced coordinators that they could find, and they did just that. So not real sure how good of a hire each candidate is yet. I guess, like I said, with Gus Malzahn, same with Tony White, only time will tell. So we'll see what happens. But those are the 3 mainline coaches at Florida State. Now let's go ahead and move on to taking a look at the quarterback room for 2025. Thomas Castellanos, he transferred over from Boston College, and he absolutely cooked Florida State last year in Tallahassee. So um, I guess he didn't like the situation in Boston College, so he decided to come to Florida State when he figured that the starting job was probably going to be up for grabs because, DJ Oogie Badoogie or, Yui Ungalale or Ukulele, whatever the heck you guys choose to call him, um, he did not provide anything good for Florida State, and it was evident in the first game last year in Ireland when they lost to Georgia Tech. But anyway, enough about that. Thomas Castellanos comes in. He will be the starting quarterback for Florida State. I'm eager to see how he does. He kind of reminds me of Kyler Murray in a way, and that's the kind of quarterback Florida State needs. They need somebody that's going to have awareness and they can also make big plays when it looks like there's nothing there. So I'm eager to see what Thomas Castellanos does for the Noles offense. And then backing him up, it's going to be Brock Glenn. Now, he is the most experienced guy on the roster under the Mike Norvell system, but I still think Thomas Castellanos should get the start. But Brock Glenn, he didn't have a great year last year, but when Jordan Travis got hurt, Glenn stepped up pretty good and led the Noles to a remaining undefeated season up until the bowl game loss against Georgia. So Brock Glenn, I mean, he has experience, but I don't personally think he's like Castellanos. So I think Norvell made the good call in who he was going to start. So, but Brock Glenn's definitely, I mean, he's not the best quarterback in the country, but I mean, given the right circumstances and the right team, Brock Glenn is definitely capable of making some plays. So we'll see what happens. And then recently, a few days ago, we have a transfer coming to Florida State, Jalen King from ETSU. I'm assuming he'll be the third stringer for the Noles. Um, I would assume, is a dual threat quarterback, much like Castellanos. So we'll see what he can provide in the future. I think he has a few years left of eligibility, so I'm eager to see what he does. So that's your quarterback room for 2025 for Florida State. Now let's talk about the wide receivers. I'm only going to be talking about two, and they both came out of the portal. So we have Squirrel White from Tennessee. He made a few key plays for Tennessee in his time. He was a freshman in 2022. He made some noise, and then 2023 made some noise. 2024 didn't really have the season we wanted him to, so he transferred out. And then now he finds himself at Florida State. He's probably going to be one of the older guys on the wide receiver core now, so I wouldn't be surprised if he's probably wide receiver 1 or 2. We'll see what Florida State decides to do with him, but nonetheless, Squirrel White is now a Nole. And then they also got Deuce Robinson from USC in the portal. I've heard Deuce Robinson was really good at USC, so I'm sure Florida State's hoping he can transfer some of his big playmaking abilities over to their offense. But nonetheless, there's not a whole lot I can say about either one of them. I just wanted to mention that Florida State got two wide receivers in the portal that are probably going to be pretty important to their offense this season. So, let's go ahead and move on to one last thing in regards to players. Jeremiah Wilson, cornerback from Houston, entered the portal and transferred to Florida State, and they are ranking him inside the top 5 in the transfer portal. So that's a big pickup for the Noles if he can produce. And from what people are saying, it sounds like he's going to. So I'm sure people are eager to see what Jeremiah Wilson can do. I have not personally seen highlights from Jeremiah Wilson, but I have looked into him, and he did seem like a pretty good player at Houston. Obviously, he was probably one of the best players that Houston had, considering their roster. But if he can make that big of an impact at Florida State, then that might spark some life into the Noles defense. So, And honestly, the defense wasn't really the problem last season for Florida State. It was their offense. So if Florida State can get their offense going and kind of have a little better defensive play, they might be okay. So we'll see what happens. But nonetheless, that's my thoughts on players. Um, well, honestly, when it comes to Florida State, the rest of the way, it's just a big unknown. Um, I mean, people can ask, are there any unknowns for Florida State? I'll just say yes. The entire team, the entire coaching staff, the entire football program as a whole is unknown right now. And I mean, Florida State went 23-4 in 2 seasons, and then had a 2-10 season last year. So a lot has to happen in a short period of time to have that much of a fall off, a historic fall off nonetheless. So, honestly, I'm not real sure what to think of Florida State. So, um, yeah, like if Florida State's just a big unknown, we don't really know what they're gonna do in 2025, but um, I can still try to give my thoughts, and that takes me to the main topic of this video, the 2025 record prediction. Let's get into it. So, um, I'm going to be 100% honest here with this prediction, so bear with me. You can say what you want about what I have to say. This is my prediction, not yours. So, but feel free to give me your thoughts in the comment section. And let's go ahead and get into it. So Florida State opens up against Alabama at home in Tallahassee, a newly renovated Doak Campbell. And they bring Alabama into town. Um, I am not ruling out an upset here for Florida State, given that it is an early game and it is a road environment for Alabama. But I'm honestly not seeing a scenario realistically where Florida State comes out on top of Alabama. So therefore, I think Florida State is going to start off 2025 in the loss column, which is not what they want to see, but that is nothing compared to how it could be. I mean, it's better than losing to Georgia Tech in week one. I would rather lose to Alabama in week one, in their position. So, and look, you never want to lose, but, um, you know, if you were going to lose to somebody, you would rather it be to somebody like Alabama. So, I'm going to take Florida State to lose to Alabama in week one, and they drop to 0-1. Then they go to week two and they play East Texas A&M. Honestly, even last season, Florida State played one, lower classification opponent and absolutely blew them out. So I think that's going to be the case for this game as well as Kent State. So I have Florida State quickly going back over 500 to 2-1. Then they play their first road game of the season at Virginia. Virginia has never really been the greatest of college football teams. It is at Virginia, so you can't overlook this game. But honestly, if Florida State plays their cards right here, I think they beat Virginia and advance to 3-1 on the season. And then they look to head back to Doak Campbell to take on Carson Beck and the Miami Hurricanes. Miami had a really good team last season. They had the number one overall draft pick from this year's draft, Cam Ward, their starting quarterback. He was really good last season. So when Florida State had to go to Miami last year and play them, it was not easy. But this year, Miami has to come to Florida State. So it's probably not going to be as easy for Miami this time around. But I still think Miami has better depth, better coaching, better recruiting, and more talent on their roster right now than Florida State does. So unfortunately for the Noles, I think they drop this one and fall to 3-2. Then they play Pitt back-to-back home games. Okay, so the way I made my decision with this game is it's a 50-50 one. So what I'm going to do is give the edge to the home team in this one. I think this game's going to be pretty back and forth. Pitt hasn't really been great since Kenny Pickett went to the NFL, because you all know Pitt won the ACC title game in 2021. So, um, but since then, Pitt really hasn't been the same. So I'm not saying Pitt's this great team, but they're one of those teams you can't really overlook. So Florida State can't get caught overlooking this game, but ultimately, I'm gonna give the edge to the Noles simply because it's a home for them. So I think they advance to 4-2. Then their next game, they go to Stanford. Stanford honestly has been in the toilet since the Christian McCaffrey era ended, and that was about a decade ago. So this is no different than playing Vanderbilt, in my opinion. The only thing that concerns me is that they have to deal with a time change and, completely different environment because Stanford is on the West Coast, and that's probably going to mess with them. So Florida State's going to have to get prepared for this road game properly and be sure they're ready to go, or that could affect them. But all in all, I think Florida State has better depth, better talent, better recruiting than Stanford. So they should be able to notch up that win and advance to 5-2 on the year. That's what I'm going to predict as they head back home to take on Wake Forest, much like Pitt and Stanford. I think Florida State overall is more talented, and it's also at Florida State. So I'm gonna give the edge to the Noles here and say they advanced to 6-2 on the season, which would give them bowl eligibility, and that would already be more than double just about the wins they had last season. So already a better step in the right direction for the Noles um, as they head to Death Valley to take on the Clemson Tigers. I don't see any way Florida State wins this game. I'm going to be real here. Honestly, this will probably be a blowout in favor of Clemson. Clemson has the chance to compete for the national title this year. They have one of the best quarterbacks in the country in Cade Klubnik. They did lose pieces, but it's Clemson and Dabo Swinney. It's rare you see them miss many beats. So ultimately, Florida State drops this game and falls to 6-3 as they head back home to take on Virginia Tech. I'm going to put Virginia Tech in the same category as Pitt, Stanford, and Wake Forest, although I do think Virginia Tech is probably going to be a better team than those three this year. But at the end of the day, this game will be at Doak Campbell, and I think that gives the edge to the Noles. So ultimately, I think Florida State advances to 7-3. And that is their last home game of the year. So they have back-to-back road games to end their season. They have one at NC State, and then they play at the Swamp against rival Florida. I think they split these games. I don't see a way Florida State wins both of them. I think there's a better chance Florida State loses both of these games versus winning both of them. So I'm going to say Florida State beats NC State because NC State kind of falls into the same category, honestly, as Pitt, Stanford, Wake Forest, and Virginia Tech. They were not good last year, and honestly, I don't see a way NC State just magically gets good. So I think Florida State goes on the road and beats NC State before their trip to rival Florida at the Swamp, which I am going to treat this one like the Clemson game. I don't think it's going to be necessarily as much of a blowout or a beating that Florida's going to give versus Clemson to Florida State. But me personally, I don't see a way Florida State comes out on top against Florida. So I think Florida gets them, and that would have Florida State finishing 8-4, 6-2 in conference play in 2025. So that would be what? So that's 6 more wins in 2025 than they had in 2024, which is a huge improvement. I'm not saying 8-4 is good, but it's way better than 2-10. You can't argue that. And that is 5 more conference wins. than they would have had last year. So the big question is, does that save Mike Norvell's job? I don't know. Um, we'll see how things shake up with the Noles in 2025, but overall, that's kind of what I'm seeing for them. There's not much more I can say, so do with that with what you will. But um, this will end the video. Um, like I said in the Tennessee video, I'm gonna say in this one, if you want me to do a record for prediction for one of your teams, please comment down below, and maybe you'll get lucky, and I'll do your team's schedule and record prediction slash preview. But for now, that's all. This has been Noah Livingston, and this has been the 2025 Florida State record prediction. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Hey, do you guys think that gets flipped this season? Do you think it does? It's been flipped since August, man.